Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I'm doing the reader's profile tag, so let's get into it. The first question, what makes a good book? This one's real difficult because it's so subjective, but I think the most essential thing is probably to have characters that the reader cares about, because if you do not care about the characters involved, you won't care about the plot, I think. And if you do care about the characters, then it won't really matter what the plot is, because it doesn't matter. Like, the story could just be about like them doing their laundry or something. And if you care about the characters, you'll care about what they are doing. So I think the most important thing in a story that makes a story good is having characters the reader cares about. Second question, what are you currently reading? I'm kind of disappointed about this because I've been reading the same books for a long while. So there's Rebecca West, Black Lamb and Grey Falcon. This is off the top 1000 list by James Mustich, 1,000 books to read before you die. I am not far into it, only, 41 pages. And I haven't probably read this book in a few months now. But I was liking the first two chapters really well. But I don't know, it's just a long book and I'm not really much in a reading mood this year. So I'm not making as much progress with it as I would like to, but that is a book I'm still currently reading. Next, I've been reading this book for somewhere around a year and I'm only 71 pages in, but it's The Cane Mutiny by Herman Wouk. And I'm actually liking this book pretty well. But again, I'm just not much in a reading mood this year. Next, this is the book I've been chipping away at reading more. So I've been reading it maybe, every, 3 or 4 days or so. But it's Orson Scott Card, Ender's Game. This is on the top 1000 list, I believe. And it is also one of the books on my 24 books to read in 2024 list. And I'm liking it pretty well, and that's pretty unexpected for me because I'm not a fan of science fiction, but I think it's overall a pretty decent book. I am 130 something pages in, about halfway through, and liking it pretty well. I thought there were other books I would have been reading because usually I'm kind of like reading 5 books simultaneously, but I was looking around and I couldn't find the other 2 books. So I think I may have like DNF'd the other books I was trying to read, maybe, because I forget what they were. So I have 2 books that I have not started yet, but the next 2 books I plan to read are Hilary Mantel, A Place of Greater Safety. This is on my 24 books to read in 2024 list. I do not know anything about it or the author whatsoever. Oh yeah, actually I started this book, so I'm like 14 or 15 pages in. I thought it was really just okay of a start, so nothing that's like really got my expectations up. And then the 5th book, I just pulled it off the 24 books to read in 2024 list today because I needed a 5th book to read. I don't know, 5 books is just kind of my like sweet spot for currently reading. But it's Jerzy Kosinski, The Painted Bird. Not a book on the top 1000 list, but it is on my 24 books to read. The bookstore owner like highly recommends this book. What he says about it is it's kind of a book about the Holocaust without ever mentioning Jews or Nazis, which is interesting. I'm kind of real iffy about what to think going into it though, but giving it a try. And the reason I say I'm iffy going into it is because there is like a lot of allegations against this writer. Like one of them is that he was just plagiarizing this entire book maybe. And there are also some other allegations against Jerzy Kosinski. So I'm not reading this book, going into it, reading it as a Jerzy Kosinski book. I'm just basically reading it as The Painted Bird by unknown author. Question 3. What is the last book you did not finish and why? That would be Dune by Frank Herbert. This is on my 24 books to read, and I read, I think, like 3 pages of this book, maybe 4, maybe 5, and it was just everything I hate about science fiction fantasy. So, I mean, it was just, random character name, random, like, place name, random just whatever, and just I just hate this book. Everything about it is everything I hate about science fiction. So after like 4 or 5 pages, I was just like, nope, I am not reading this crap. It is not for me. I might try giving like the movies a watch to see like if I could get into it that way, just so I have an idea of who the characters are and what is going on. That was kind of the case with me for Game of Thrones. I tried reading the book first and it just didn't do anything for me. Then I watched the TV show Game of Thrones and I really liked it. Then I went back and I read the book and it was fine. So maybe Dune could be like, thank you, baby. Maybe Dune could be something like the same way. Maybe I'll see the movies and have an idea about the characters and the plot and what's going on. And then I could go back and read the book and I could know, like, when it mentions the characters, who that is. So we will see. If I see like a copy of like the Dune movies like at Walmart or something, I might get it and give them a watch. And if I like the films at all, then I might go back and try to give the book another read. Question 4. What obscure book do you wish other people would read? For this one, I don't want to get it out because I don't want to knock any of these little guys over because they're a major pain to try to like reset back up. But it would be The City of Dreaming books by Walter Moores. I don't really want to say much about it, but I will just say this is my favorite book in the entire world. I love The City of Dreaming books, so it's my favorite book ever. And it bothers me kind of because Walter Moores is not really a well-known writer at all. I mean, he's not on the top 1,000 list. He's not like a best-selling author or anything. I've never seen any of his books at the bookstore. I just happened to see this book at the library one day, and I picked it up off the shelf because like the spine of the book showed like books on the spine. And I was like, oh, a book about books. That looks interesting. So I pulled it and I read it, and I absolutely loved it. So, I wish more people would read The City of Dreaming books. Question 5. What is the longest book you've ever read? In terms of like actually finishing the book, reading the whole thing, every word, every page of the whole book, it would probably be A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Again, when I tried to read it the first time, I couldn't get into it. After watching the TV show, I came back to it and I really liked it. And this is like a rare book where it is like 1,100 pages or something like that. And I did not think the book should have been cut by like anything. I didn't think there was like 200 pages of fluff or unnecessary content or whatever. In some of the future books, I do think there was some like extra words, like, you know, maybe the books could have been cut by 200 or 300 pages. But for A Game of Thrones, the first book, I thought it was really perfect. Every word, every page was really quite necessary. Thank you, baby. So I really liked A Game of Thrones, the first book especially. So overall, I really liked A Game of Thrones. I thought the description was all real good. I do think he did use italics too much, which ultimately got on my nerves more and more as it went on. But all in all, I really liked it. Question 6. If you could have a dinner party with 5 fictional characters, who would they be? Ooh, this one's kind of tricky because I'm not much into like parties or anything. And a lot of the people I was trying to think of when coming up with like my 5, I was like, no, this person would probably kill me. No, this person would probably eat me. No, this person would definitely get in a fight. So it was kind of tricky thinking of 5 like good ones who I would actually want to like sit down with for dinner. So first on the list is Dirk Pitt from Clive Cussler's books. Dirk Pitt was like my childhood hero growing up. Reading Clive Cussler in high school, Dirk Pitt was like my hero. So he would be first off the list. I think Dirk Pitt would be a pretty good like party guy. I mean, he's pretty outgoing. He would have a lot of stories, so he would just be a good conversationalist. And I think he would be pretty approachable and just a real kind of friendly, easy guy to like sit down with and talk with and have dinner with and just, yeah. So Dirk Pitt is number 1. My second choice was pretty clear and easy, but it would be Neville Longbottom from the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Neville is my favorite character in the series, and I think he would really be like the most interesting one to actually like sit down with and talk with. Because I mean, like Harry, I mean, he is like just kind of too famous and he has all this stuff going on and just I don't know. I don't really know if I would like thank you baby. I don't know if I would really like Harry. I wouldn't like Hermione. Ron Weasley would be a decent option. Dumbledore would also be interesting, but I don't know, just he's kind of too old and I don't know. I'd be worried his teeth would fall out. So I think Neville Longbottom would be my most interesting pick for a dinner party guest. Third, I was thinking, okay, well, what else could I do? So I was thinking, well, what about a Lord of the Rings character? So I thought of like Aragorn and Gandalf and Samwise. Sam was almost my pick. Thank you, baby. But then I realized, thank you, baby. I want someone who is like pretty outgoing and like good at a party. And the most clear choice of that list would be, thank you, baby, Pippin. I think Pippin would be a good dinner guest. He seems like a guy who would just love to party. He'd be a guy who'd be like friendly and outgoing. Thank you, baby. So I think Pippin would be a good dinner guest. Fourth, I was thinking maybe like a Princess Bride character. So I thought, what about Buttercup? Then I was like, no, she's probably just too into herself. And then I was like, well, what about Wesley? And I was just, I don't know about Wesley. So then I decided the most interesting party guest I think would be Inigo Montoya. I don't really know why, there's not much about him in the book, like to his personality, other than that he wants revenge. But I think he would be an interesting guy to just sit down with and talk with and learn more about this guy. So, fourth is Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride by William Goldman. And then fifth was real difficult. I am winding up going with Blue Bear from Walter Moore's book, The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Blue Bear. I think Blue Bear would just be like a real easy party guest. I mean, just because he's like not too aggressive or anything, he's not like too much personality or whatever. He would just kind of be there, and I think he would be real curious. He'd be real kind of soft spoken. So I would just like to have Blue Bear there, and he would probably be so cuddly. So I don't know, maybe I could just be like sitting on Blue Bear's lap talking with Inigo Montoya. That would be cool. So those are my 5 dinner guests. Dirk Pitt, Neville Longbottom, Pippin, Inigo Montoya, and Blue Bear. Question 7. List 5 books you would want to have with you if you were stranded on a desert island. I think the 5 books I would want stranded on a desert island, or I don't know if it's supposed to be deserted island, would be survivalist books. I would want to know how to make things and how to cook things and whatever, how to survive. I think that would be the most practical books, not just literature. But since that is probably not the intent of this question, I would choose books that are pretty long so they would give me, something to read for a while I'm hopefully waiting to be rescued. And I would pick longer books that would probably not be something I would ordinarily be able to read or get through. But since I'm stuck on this desert island or deserted island or whatever, I would have nothing else to do other than read these books. So the first book would be Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I read about 150 or 200 pages of this book. It's something like a 1,200 page book. And it just kind of wound up driving me crazy and I just got bored with it. But if I had nothing else to do, I think it would be interesting to be able to read this entire book so I could get a better impression of it. And in case you're hearing any noises, because the bird is playing. So Atlas Shrugged would be my first book. Not because it's my favorite book in the world, so don't jump on me. It's just because I tried to read the book. I liked parts of it. I liked parts of her writing very well. But it was just such a drain to try to read all of this. But if I have nothing better to do, I'd like to be able to finish this book. The second book I would take on the deserted island would be Black Lamb and Grey Falcon by Rebecca West, the book I mentioned earlier, because this is such a long book, and the first chapter of this book I really liked. Like, the first chapter of this book made me think, ooh, this is probably or potentially could be a 5-star book. The first chapter alone pretty much guaranteed it will not get a 1-star rating. So I would like to be able to read this entire book if I can. I'm really worried though about the length, and I could just get tired of it, or maybe the book will go in a direction I do not like. So if I had nothing else to do, I would probably bring this book along just in the hopes that I could read the whole thing. And even if I do get bored, like, halfway through or whatever, or 200 pages in, I could just soldier on and read the whole book and be able to get a complete impression of the book. Read the entire thing. So this would be my second book, Black Lamb and Grey Falcon. The third book I would take would be Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. This is a book I was pretty hopeful for because it's on the top 1,000 list, and I have 3 signed books by Salman Rushdie. I began reading this book literally like 2 days before the stabbing. And I think I read just like 2 pages or something like that, maybe 3 or 4 pages. I don't know, but it's probably like 2 pages. And I just got bored by it. I fell asleep trying to read it. Then, he was stabbed. Then like 2 days later, I tried picking up the book again, and I read another 2 pages, I think. And again, I was just falling asleep trying to read this thing. So I just was not getting into it at all. So I think I would take this book just because I could try to force myself to read it and try to get some kind of an appreciation for Salman Rushdie. Because I do kind of want to like him because he wrote this book, I think it was the Satanic Verses, which pissed Iran off, the country of Iran, and their leader, and put out a kill order on Salman Rushdie. So I like him for that reason, that he wrote a book that offended an entire religion. So I sympathize with that, and I want to like him kind of because of that. I want to give his books a try. I want to try reading all of his books, really. But this was the first book I tried by him, and it was just so agonizingly boring. Nothing was working for me. So I would pick this book just in the hopes that I could give it a try and give it a complete read through. The fourth book I would take would be Dune by Frank Herbert. Again, I tried to read this book, and after like 4 pages, I was just like, nope, not for me. So I would like to bring this book and read it, because at least that way, if I don't get something, thank you, baby, I could just try to keep reading. Keep reading, read the whole thing. Maybe like halfway into the book, I finally begin to learn what the hell is going on here. And then I could try giving it a reread, and then I'll know like, oh, that's who this character is. I know that character. And it would make sense more the second time around, and maybe the third time around, and maybe I could read it the 4th time and actually begin to like it. Thank you, baby. So, Dune would be my 4th book. And then 5th, I do not have a copy of it, but it would be Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This is another book I read probably like 300 pages, like, I don't know, 3 years ago. And I really liked like the first 150 or 200 pages. I mean, it was going to be like a for sure 5-star book. I was loving the description of that book, Gone with the Wind. But there were things that just bothered me crazily. I mean, thank you, bang. Like overuse of exclamation points, repetition of sentences. There were things about Scarlet I just did not like. So I would take that book just so I could try reading the entire thing. So hopefully I could get a better impression of the entire book. So those are my 5 books. Atlas Shrugged, Black Lamb and Grey Falcon, Midnight's Children, Dune, and Gone with the Wind. Question 8. What is one book you could not put down? Well, I did wind up putting it down, but it was real difficult because I was like, if I'm going to read this entire book in one sitting, I'm going to be up till like 6 in the morning. And I didn't want to just read this entire book in one day. Thank you, baby. That is, and I know I'm probably going to catch some fire for this, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So, I read the Harry Potter series like years after it came out, and in fact, I like began reading the series, and I read like each book. It took me about a month per book, which is real quick for me. And what was real cool is like literally, I think the day after I finished Deathly Hollows. Maybe it's like the day before or the day of or the day after or something like that, but it was definitely within a day of finishing Deathly Hollows, reading the entire series all the way through, one book per month. Like within a day of finishing Deathly Hollows, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child came out. And that was real funny because like a lot of fans were waiting like, 10 or 15 years for another Harry Potter book. So when they finally got it and read it, they were just, all the anticipation was so much built up for them. So I think a lot of people were disappointed because they wanted more from it. But for me, I really liked it because I just finished the main series and then I was able to immediately begin on this book. And I liked it pretty well, and it was just interesting to me because it was like a sequel or also kind of like a spin-off. So it's just real interesting to read, and I just kind of went with it. I didn't have the 10 years of like anticipation built up for reading this book. I just finished Deathly Hollows the previous day. So I immediately went into this book and I liked it really well. So I read half of it in one sitting, and then I was kind of like, well, I better put this down because I don't want to finish this whole book in, one day. And so, yeah. But I could have read this book in one sitting, which again is really rare for me because as I said, some of those books I'm currently reading, I'm only like 20 pages in and I've been reading them for like 5 months. So for me to read every book in this series, one book per month, and then to read this book in just 2 days, could have finished it in one day, that's real fast reading for me. So I don't think it was like an epic 5-star book or anything, but to me it was just a good kind of spin-off story, just kind of like a supplement to the Harry Potter series. So I liked it pretty well. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was unique, and I liked it. Question 9. List the books or authors you will never read. First on the list, Colleen Hoover. And this is a signed book. This is the only reason I have it is because it's a signed book. But I am absolutely not ever, ever, ever going to read a Colleen Hoover book. I just do not like her. I think she is way overrated. Even without like reading any of her books, she is overrated. I hate that I go to bookstores or whatever, or go to book aisles of, bookstores like Walmart or Target or whatever, and there is like entire, not even just sections, there's like entire aisles of Colleen Hoover books. So she should not just take up that much space of any kind of book aisle or whatever. And it was real funny to me. I think it was at Target. I was browsing the book section, keeping away from the Colleen Hoover section, and like a young woman was there with like her boyfriend or whatever, and so they were looking at books and she said something like, oh, this is my favorite author, and then I looked and it was Colleen Hoover, and I just thought to myself, you could do better, my guy. You could do better than her. Dump her. So yeah, that's my view on Colleen Hoover. I don't really like have any justified reason really to think that. I've never read her, so I don't know. She may be a good writer. I do not know, but I just think she is way overrated to have so many books in a section. And I think it's just like all these, like teenage girls and young girls get obsessed with things, and then like 5 years later they are just like completely gone. I mean, there's like 50 Shades of Grey, now that's like not really a thing anymore. There was Hunger Games, that's not really a thing anymore. There was Twilight, that's not really a thing anymore. So these teenage girls and young women, they just get obsessed with things, and it's just crap. So I am not reading Colleen Hoover. I don't care. If I ever have a girlfriend who is like, oh, Sean, you should read Colleen Hoover, that may not work out. I'm not doing it. Well, okay, I would do it because I'm just that way, but I would not be happy. Second for authors I will not read, and I don't know if this really counts because I actually have tried reading this author, but it's Colson Whitehead. I tried reading his book, The Underground Railroad, and I just hated that book. I read probably like 20, 25 pages or so, and I just utterly hated it. It seemed to me like the entire book just boiled down to one message alone, which was slavery bad. That was like the only message behind the book. And that's just like so bland. Like, really? That's like your big message? So I just hated that book. I thought there was nothing about it that was interesting, nothing about it that was good, nothing about it that was fresh, I guess. I mean, it was just like, why does this book even exist? What is the purpose of this? Just slavery bad. That's the entire message of the book. Like, yeah, we know. So I just didn't like it at all, and because of it, I've also just seen a lot of Colson Whitehead books around, and I'm really not a fan of a lot of popular stuff. I think a lot of popular stuff is overrated. I like underdogs. I like, people who are trying to get ahead. I don't really like when someone is just like super famous, because I kind of think they have enough fame, they have enough money, they have enough wealth, they have enough success or whatever. I mean, I don't well, I don't know if I want to say I don't feel envious about it. Because, I mean, it'd be kind of cool to have all that wealth and whatever. But I do think, hey, it's fine. It's cool. You wrote something, you got real famous, you got real rich, good for you. But I would rather think, they've had their success. I don't really need to like give them more success. I would rather try to find someone else who is trying to get ahead, trying to achieve their dreams, and try to like lift them up, kind of, help them achieve their dreams instead of just helping this other person who's already achieved their dreams. They already have success. They're already well known. They're already in all the bookstores. I mean, they've had their success. They don't need help. So that is kind of why I just generally don't really like popular things, and it goes for everything. I mean, it goes for like, real popular books, real popular movies, real popular TV shows, real popular music. I'm just kind of like, I'm not really into that. You might be thinking, Sean, you hypocrite, you have all these Harry Potter books right behind you. Well, that's an example of an author where I thought, super famous, I'm not interested in the Harry Potter books. But I think my girlfriend really wanted me to try them, so I did, and I actually really fell in love with it. And I realized this was actually real good. So I thought the Harry Potter series was worthy of all the acclaim it's gotten. Same thing with like A Game of Thrones. I did not read that for a long while. And, the TV show was going on, and I did not watch the TV show for a long while. But I finally did, and I liked it. And then I watched or read the book, and I liked it as well. So yes, I can definitely appreciate that some fame is justly deserved. Some things are like, they are worth all the attention it's gotten, or they deserve all the attention it's gotten. That is definitely a case. But for the most part, if something is like real popular, I tend to not be interested in it, and I will wait at least several years to try to give it a read myself. For instance, I have this book Babel right here. This was all over BookTube like, I don't know, about 2 years ago now. I did not read it when it was all the craze or whatever, and I did not really plan on reading it. But, it's kind of, I want to wait a few years and then give it a try after like all the crazes died down, kind of, and give it a try and see if all the craze it got was worth it. That is kind of how I like to go. So I will not pick up something when it is super fresh and super popular and everyone is reading it. I am like not interested at that point. But after, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, I may give it a try and see, was all the attention it got, did it deserve that? That's kind of how I am. The third is James Patterson. And again, this is an author where I have actually read or tried to read 2 of his books. I tried to read his first book, which was, I don't even remember the name. I think it may have been called Along Came a Spider. And I just didn't like it at all, really. Then I tried to read his second book, Kiss the Girls, I think. which was actually made into a movie with Morgan Freeman and I forget who the other person was. Oh, what's her name? I think Ashley Judd. And I kind of like that movie pretty well. But I just did not like that book at all because the author just kept repeating. I don't even want to say what it was, but he was repeating a certain phrase. And I was just like, nope, I'm not reading this because he used it like 6 times in a chapter. And I was just, nope, I hate that. I'm not going to read this anymore. If I read another one of those phrases, I'm going to throw this book against the wall and then burn it and then burn the wall. Because I just don't like it. I don't like James Patterson. I would kind of like to say why, but I'm not sure if I could be like, liable or get sued or whatever. So I'll just say I do not like James Patterson. I'm not really interested in reading him at all. The only reason I read him, I think, is because I think Along Came a Spider or whatever the first book by him was. I think it was on the top 1000 list by James Moostich. So I kind of had to read it. And then I was curious about the second book, Kiss the Girls. Let's check real quick. Oh, no. Kiss the Girls was on the top 1000 list. And then I found out that was the second book he wrote. So then I kind of figured, well, I guess I'll read his first book, which was the book Along Came the Spider or whatever. So I read that book first since it's his first book. Then I read Kiss the Girls and then I was just done with it. So I only read it because it's on the top 1000 list. So yeah, James Patterson, third author I refuse to read. Do not like him at all. The fourth author I refuse to read is Nora Roberts. Not for any real good reason. It's just because she is just so popular. She has so many books, and it's kind of what I was saying. A super popular author. I'm just not really interested. And then I think just her books, like her genre in general, I would not be interested in them. So I'm just not interested. I think authors like her are probably more just like, oh, I don't know how to say it. I think they're probably very formulaic. I mean, all their books are probably pretty much the same. That's how they are able to put out so many books. They just kind of change the character names and that's it. Then they just put out another book. It's the same plot. It's the same kind of characters. It's just different character names, maybe a different setting. But it's all, for all intents and purposes, it's the exact same book. And they just put it out every single year or several books a year. And I just don't like that at all. I don't really respect that. I think that's just like a cheap money grab in a way. I like books where the author is trying to always do better, to always improve. That is what I do with my books, is I try to make every book better than the one that came before it. And I put a lot of work into my books. Like, it may take me roughly about 5 or 6 years to have a book go from start to publish. So I do not really like authors who just churn out novels, several times a year. I just think, how can it be quality writing when they do that? That is just quantity over quality. So I'm just not interested in that kind of thing. The fifth author I would not read is James Joyce. I tried to read his book Dubliners because it's on the top 1000 list, and I don't even think I read a single word of the book because I was reading in the introduction or whatever, which I usually would not read. The person who came up with his book, the editor of the book they were saying how James Joyce throughout his life or his career was trying to figure out how he wanted to present dialogue in books. And I guess what he kind of wound up doing is he used dashes for dialogue. So what this editor of the book Dubliners did is he had all the dialogue with dashes instead of quotation marks, because I guess that's kind of like what James Joyce kind of settled on doing later in his life. He liked using dashes for dialogue. And I just hate that. I think every book in the world should use quotation marks for dialogue. There are some authors who don't even use quotation marks. I mean, the dialogue is just in with the narration. There's no any kind of italics or dashes or nothing. It just has the line in plain font and no quotation marks or anything. I just hate that. Why do authors do that? I think it's so arrogant, authors just thinking, I am too good to use quotation marks. No, you're not. Use quotation marks. So I just hated that. I kind of refuse to read any book that does not have quotation marks. The other thing is James Joyce, I found out, was a stream of consciousness writer. I do not like stream of consciousness writing because every stream of consciousness writer I have tried, I have utterly hated, like J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye, Virginia Woolf, Samuel Beckett. Just every stream of consciousness writer does nothing for me. I think William Faulkner was also a stream of consciousness writer. It just does nothing for me. I hate it because I think it's just like stream of consciousness writing. You sit at a keyboard or a typewriter and you just type whatever without thought and then send it to the publisher as a first draft and say, oh, it's a stream of consciousness writing. It's a stream of consciousness book. It's just whatever came to my mind at the time. I just wrote it down. And to me, that just requires no thought. I mean, I could write something better than all these other writers have done, like Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I could write a book as good or better than that, definitely better than that, within like 3 days as a first draft. And I would just hate it though, because it's just a stupid book. There's no thought put into it. So again, it's kind of the quantity versus quality thing. I work for 5 years on a book. I don't just write something in 2 days as a first draft, just whatever comes to my mind. Don't even edit it, just send it off to the publisher or whatever and publish it and make money on it. And, hell, maybe the book would be very popular, but I'm just not really interested in that. I don't really respect that as an art form. To me, that is just like doodling. I think it's much more valuable to work hard on something and to really be proud of it and, to put time into it. But anyway, so that's just me. So the 5 authors I'd not be willing to read another book by are Colleen Hoover, Colson Whitehead, James Patterson, Nora Roberts, and James Joyce. Question 10. If you were to write a book, what would it be about? This question doesn't really apply to me because, of course, I've written books. But I guess I'll tell you about a book that I have kind of planned on writing, but I probably will never get to it. So I'll just tell you guys about that. I have an idea for a screenplay for a film that is a prequel to Patton, the George C. Scott movie. The World War II General Patton. I would like to write a screenplay that is sort of a prequel to that film, where it would show Patton's early life and especially like his World War I years and then like his interwar years. One major thing about the book would be like his friendship with Dwight D. Eisenhower. In the film, Patton, his kind of best friendship is with Omar Bradley, but I think in real life, Patton's closest friend at least from a military perspective or whatever, was Eisenhower. He was real close with Eisenhower, especially in the interwar years. They had a lot of interactions, so they knew each other very well. So that would kind of be a focus of the book. I don't actually know what actually happened between them in those years that would be interesting to go into a movie or whatever. But that would kind of be more the focus of the book, would be showing the friendship between Patton and Eisenhower, because that wasn't explored at all in the film. You don't even meet Eisenhower in the film. So there would be that, and then the climax of the movie would be Patton's arrival in Morocco. And in the film, Patton, the first scene with Patton shows after his speech in front of the flag or whatever, the first scene with him is him reviewing those soldiers at that march, and the guy is we congratulate you on your brilliant amphibious landing on the continent of Africa, or whatever the line is. So what he's referring to was Patton's first campaign in World War II, which was in Morocco, where they had this amphibious landing. So that would be the climax of the film. Everything is leading to that point. So you see his early life, his World War I years, his interwar years, especially his relationship with Eisenhower, and then at last his arrival in Africa and the Moroccan campaign or whatever, his landing in Morocco. And so you kind of see his first battle in World War II. Basically, Patton has arrived in World War II, and that would be the end of the film. A real cool thing I found out is that there is actually kind of a sequel to Patton starring George C. Scott, where it kind of shows like he's on his deathbed, I think. And I don't know what it's about, but I think it's sort of like he is reminiscing on his earlier life. So, I mean, that's kind of like close to it. And I'd be interested to see that because I just didn't know there was a sequel to Patton with George C. Scott. But anyway, so yeah, that is my idea of a screenplay for a movie. A prologue or whatever, a prequel to the film Patton, showing Patton's early life, his life before World War II, leading up to his first battle in World War II. So that is it. So thank you guys for watching. If you're another booktuber and you want to do this tag, feel free. I will try to post the original author of this tag in the description, so if you want to see that, go give a click over to it. So, thank you guys for watching. See you next time. Bye!